Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the business of sports.
Sports are the greatest unscripted show on earth.
The next generation of players really grew up with tech and believe in tech.
Your face is your ticket. Your face is your wallet. Your face is your access to a club.
These are such iconic and important buildings for businesses, for fans.
COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to golf.
The NFL is a bulletproof business.
Racing's unique because there is absolutely no reason why we can't compete with the guys.
Come on, is pro pickleball real? Are people really going to tune into this?
If you're playing Moneyball with a huge bag of money, you're going to be really, really good.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And I'm Vanessa Perdomo.
Coming up, we'll hear from sports super agent and Klutch sports founder Rich Paul for a conversation about the sports apparel industry and his sportswear company's deal with New Balance.
The apparel business, from a sports performance perspective, is a very crowded space. It just is, and it's very hard to build a brand. Most companies really start to see a positive impact probably in about year 7. But we have a great partner in New Balance. We have an unbelievable team in terms of our leadership group.
All that is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, let's talk venture capital.
That's right, Michael Barr. VC firms are seeing big value in sports, and they're pushing into new and emerging leagues.
Earlier this year, Dubai-based investment firm 885 Capital took a stake in the Professional Fighters League, or better known as the PFL.
Here now to take us through the deal and what VC firms are doing in the sports world are Sudeep Ramnani and Donn Davis. Ramnani is founder and managing partner at 885 Capital, and Davis is founder and chairman of the PFL. Sudeep, Donn, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Great to be here.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having us.
Donn, I'm going to start with you. You have partnered with 885 Capital, and you are the Professional Fighters League founder and chairman, and now this sport is really going to take off. Tell us more about that, please.
Look, we're super fortunate to partner with Sudeep and his partner, Jay. There's money out there, but there's not money that comes from great entrepreneurs like 885. They've built their own major business. They know entrepreneurial energy, entrepreneurial ideas, and how to build entrepreneurial companies. Super fortunate what they bring to the table in terms of helping PFL in the next chapter.
And Sudeep, we want to hear from you on your ethos when you're going into investments like with the PFL and other similar things like with Baller League, these challenger properties. I'm interested to hear what value you feel in those investments and what you saw in the PFL.
I mean, I think we're in like a very interesting period of time in the sector in general, right? I mean, there's so many different trends that have made these leagues interesting, right? Like so many inflection points from a distribution standpoint. Of course, we've seen that like YouTube is one of, is in the living room. Like there's a major change, right? Cord cutting is a real thing. Like there's a major change in the way in which, in terms of infrastructure, streaming platforms have become global brands, right? So obviously there's that inflection point in distribution that we just see that the right property can scale globally very, very quickly, right? And can reach a global audience very quickly. And then, of course, there's an inflection point in terms of how content is being consumed, the fragmentation of the way in which content is being consumed via short form, like, and what is the way, what is the way to sometimes monetize that fragmentation, in the case of that fragmentation. So where there are these inflection points and changes, and of course, obviously, the advent of AI has created proliferation of content in general, right? Because sports is entertainment and content is, and then there are other forms of entertainment other than sports, right? But with AI and with generative AI, we see such a huge volume of content at the base of the pyramid that suddenly I think there's this premium on live sports, on really high quality live sports content that can't be replaced or really disrupted by AI, right? So these different kind of inflection points are super interesting and create opportunity, right? But then of course, where there's opportunity, often you see bubbles and you see this over excitement, right? So there's obviously definitely a lot of, crazy decks coming our way from all sorts of people almost, that want to be entrepreneurs and let's see whether they succeed. So there's definitely going to be a lot of casualties, I think, in the space as people people also say. But in the case of PFL and Border League, I think we've encountered really like solid management teams with that are building real businesses for which there's just real user demand, and where they're building IP for the long term, and they own that IP, and they have the ability to control an ecosystem end to end, that they're building a direct relationship with their fan and their user base. And for us, coming from an internet background, that's very valuable to us, like speaking to businesses where there's an understanding of the end user, and it's simply it sounds obvious, but just people who are looking to create value for their customers, right? And we found that with great entrepreneurs and management team at both Border League and PFL.
Well, Sudeep, there's no questioning the impact cord cutting has been having on media, and media rights and broadcast rights writ large. And I believe that's how you and Don got to know each other a bit, right? By when PFL was negotiating its African broadcast rights. And I think that's what led to your investment in the league, if I'm not mistaken. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like. Now, for our audience, in addition, 885, you own Africa's largest sports book, SportyBet and Sporty TV. And, talk to us a little bit about your approach to investing in the world of sports and what drew you to Don.
Yeah, of course. As you said, I'm come from more of an operator background and have built multitude of businesses from scratch, including Sporty Group, but also numerous kind of fintechs across emerging markets, including Africa and Latin America. As you said, we encountered John. I think we encountered Don because of a relatively small broadcast deal, actually, that brought PFL to our attention, and obviously we found it fascinating that PFL, an American New York headquartered company, had the bravery to go to somewhere like Africa and seek to build a local league from scratch, right? Because that takes long-term vision. That takes really a lot of grit and kind of visionary thinking. So that definitely drew us to the project. But of course, you can always partner with a project or just simply take a more short-term outlook. In the case of 885 Capital, it's an independent investment firm owned by us and makes independent decisions. Obviously, the introduction came, or the way we met PFL was through the fact that we own one of Africa's largest free-to-air sports broadcaster. But then we started to explore PFL for its own merits, right? Not just because of its if it's Africa project, but really actually more because of its global ambition, because of the category, because of the management team, and yeah, I mean that it was interesting. Don Davis is an interesting character, a polarizing one, but I've really enjoyed getting to know him, and I think it's going to be entertaining having this chat with him.
That's a compliment from a fellow entrepreneur.
I was going to ask how you liked that categorization there, Don. Don, Sudeep had said a lot there about how PFL is building into this global brand. And I heard you say in an interview earlier this year, I believe, that you think the big four in North America is eventually going to be the NFL, NBA, Premier League, and MMA. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on when you're building out a global brand and you're having these deep roots in the Middle East and other places, how you think that's going to help build the league here as well and stamp the North American, platform and grow that as well when you're competing with domestic leagues here? Yeah,
like Sudeep, I'm an entrepreneur, but unlike Sudeep, who's young at 39, I'm 62. So I've lived through three major disruptive cycles on the digital side. I was at AOL in the formative period of Internet 1.0, mid-90s. Money always follows consumer behavior. So money always follows eyeballs and audience. MMA has the third largest audience in the world today, 650 million fans, trails only soccer and basketball. But the money hasn't followed because MMA is only a 30-year-old sport. All other sports are about 100 years old. So we know that MMA will be a much bigger commercial business. It just takes time. No different from in 1997 at AOL. People are still putting money in magazines, publishing. You know that's going to change because of behavior. It just took 10 years after that period for that to happen. So this will happen. I'm not smart enough to know is it 2 years or 7 years, but the money has already started to move as evidenced by the massive UFC Paramount deal and also some of the other sponsorship that'll follow. So MMA will be there. The only two MMA companies are UFC and PFL because of the athlete base. Those are the only two companies that have top athletes, and the global distribution base. Those are the only two companies that have global distribution. So why we love partnering with Sudeep and others like them is they're going where the puck is going. Yes, football, basketball, baseball, those are great investments. They'll make 4-6% a year. But how do you make 5 or 10 times your money if you're going to take a 20-year horizon? You have to think different. You don't make 5 or 10 times your money by not thinking differently, and all the trends tell you MMA is it.
Have we hit the point, Don, where if you're in sports, venture capital is critical to the whole thing in order to see a profit or to invest in the team itself?
Yes, and I'll answer that 2 ways. Private equity money, or call it big traditional money, is essential for the bigger sports because they need to build bigger complexes, real estate and entertainment, to support their sports. That's why you're seeing basketball sell at record numbers at $5 billion. They need broader revenue streams, but that's private equity. Emerging sports, like the PFL or others, need venture capital because they're not going to be profitable for a while. So they need true builders, true visionaries, like Sudeep and 885, like some of our other investors, Knighthead Capital. So I say, yes, you need capital to build companies, but it's 2 very different kinds of capital. Traditional billions will go into the big 4 and call it those who are looking for outsized returns and are builders will be the venture capitalists that go into the emerging leagues.
And Sudeep, can you expand more on that?
Yeah, honestly, like I don't think too much about the types of capital. You know, I guess that's Don obviously has been through an incredible journey with PFL, and he's had to, keep finding ways for the company to survive and raise funding. And I really admire that resilience and persistence that's taken to get this far. I like to build stuff, and I like to just think of focus on not thinking about the fundraising for the company. Obviously, where we have capital, we just like to look at a company that's creating value for customers, right? Like as in whatever capital makes sense, whoever's like is it a convenient source of capital? Is it on the right terms? And is that an investor that's creating value, right? Like I don't think it matters. Like what does venture mean, right? Because they'll get outsized returns. I don't think we're even thinking or trying to project specific returns. I think we're just thinking is there demand for this? Like who are the other players? Like can this team succeed? Like it's clear that there's an opportunity. So can this team succeed? Does it have the assets and does it have the runway to succeed? And obviously we hope that other co-investors have that same mindset and are just focused on creating value and not being disruptive. And I think actually there are the guys that are supporting PFL today are like Tom mentioned, like Knighthead and others are really great co-investors, and I think there's a bright future ahead.
Our thanks to 885 Capital founder and managing partner Sudeep Ramnani and PFL founder and chairman Donn Davis for joining us.
Coming up, we turn to a management company that's a big part of NFL superstar Travis Kelce's success off the field.
Ooh, for Bloomberg Business of Sports, Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And joining us for this conversation is friend of the show, Bloomberg US sports business reporter Randall Williams.
Athletes today are going beyond endorsements and media appearances. Travis Kelce is a great example of a current NFL star that is looking to make himself into a cultural and business powerhouse beyond sports.
Yeah, André Eanes is one of the guys behind the curtain helping Travis Kelce. He's co-head of 3 Art Sports and joins us now to discuss the evolving business of being a multi-platform superstar. André, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are giving advice to athletes. It used to be the big thing was get an endorsement because you're going to get some money. Now you're saying, look, it's equity over endorsements. Explain that, please.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where this industry is evolving. It's changing a lot. And I think, athletes are starting to recognize the value that they can bring to a lot of these consumer brands and products and things they promote and endorse. So oftentimes, you have to, it's a learned behavior, right? You have to go through a career where you understand what it's like to be a brand ambassador. You understand what it's like to promote products, being on set, shooting commercials, doing interviews, and really being a very value add partner to the brands that you're working with. And then I think that is what gives, clients the ability to own their own brands, build their own products, and create their own things, but I think it's something you have to go through, right? We've worked with a lot of clients. We've been in this business for a very long time, and, credit to the clients, the guys that came before us, that, the LeBrons of the world, the Kevin Durants of the world, that you really set the tone for athlete ownership and being, and I quote, more than an athlete.
André, it's Randall Williams here, and I'll start by giving you a hard time because I have been trying to get in touch with you for a very, very long time, and I thought that, because I'm from Ohio just like you, I thought that there might be a special place for me, but, that's neither here nor there.
Nice. What part of Ohio? I have to ask.
I'm from Columbus.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
You're from Cincinnati. I think I know that pretty well, right?
So from Cleveland.
Okay.
Went to St. Edward High School in Cleveland.
Gotcha.
And went down to Cincinnati, went to school there, graduated there, and spent a lot of time there for sure.
So let's stay in Ohio and talk about arguably your most popular client, and maybe that isn't an argument at all, but Travis Kelce. Earlier this year, you negotiated a 9-figure deal that is absolutely monumental. I mean, you don't see that from athletes too often. You see a lot of deals that are out there, but of course with that huge number, I wonder what went into that, how much work they put in, and from your vantage point, how easy was it? Because I imagine with all of the hype around the Kelces the last couple of years, that maybe this wasn't as difficult as it may have been. Nice.
So not we're referring to the podcast.
Yep.
Okay, so that was a couple years ago, but I would say it's one of those things where, it was when athlete podcasting was becoming a thing a couple years back, and I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that the brothers knew the amount of time and attention that it was going to take to be able to be successful in the space, and we didn't rush it. We spent years meeting with companies, meeting with producers to understand what the landscape looks like and how we can best position our clients to be successful. And I think that was a key difference in why they were able to become successful. There's a lot of athlete podcasts out there, but their dynamic is insane, and their brothers and their chemistry also insane. And it also helped, the year we launched the podcast, they both made it to the Super Bowl. So it put a lot of eyeballs on what they were doing. Right. And, the weekly banter and conversations is something that I think a lot of people can resonate with, and it worked from there. But I think it goes back to our pitch always having ownership, right? The brothers own New Heights. That is their IP. We help them create the IP, but they own it. And I think their ability to be able to build something like that for their family is ultimately what drove us to be able to work with Wondery and be able to negotiate a deal of that magnitude.
André, you've been representing athletes forever, right? I mean, A&A Management recently acquired, I think earlier this year by 3 Arts Sports. You've worked with, Spotify, Hugo Boss, Louis Vuitton, EA Sports, you name it. Let's go back to growing up. Your parents owned 17 Burger King franchises in Cleveland and Cincinnati and Atlanta, I believe. And, take us back, take us to those days and how that prepared you to deal with some of these, large partners that, you guys as a startup have really gotten close to. And I mean, kudos to you all for doing it. But I mean, what'd you learn from those early years?
We've come from an entrepreneur family. I think we spent a lot of time in the back of Burger Kings, in the offices, right? And watched our mom and dad, manage and build the business. We were involved in their expansion to Atlanta. We were involved in the expansion to Cincinnati. And when I say involved, we're in the back seat, when they would go visit sites and meet with people to kind of build and grow the business and things like that, right? We didn't know what was going on. We were kids, right? But what our ability to be able to be exposed to that type of lifestyle at such a young age, I think resonates with how we work now, right? We watched our parents do the work. We watched our parents walk the sites. We watched our parents go through the things they had to go through, managing, a franchise like Burger King in the early 90s, and one of the things that, stands out to me the most is a lot of my dad's partners were Browns players, Indians players, and we got to go hang out with Indians pitchers and their families. And we would go hang out. We would go to Detroit with, one of his investors play for the Pistons back in the day. Like I was at the 2004 Pistons finals, when I was a child, right? Look, and it's just like looking back, it was like one of those things where I'm like, you never know like the rooms that you're in and why you're in those rooms. But I think that was what propelled us into being like, 14 years ago when athlete management wasn't a thing. It was always agents were doing this and doing everything, right? Where we were like, no, let's flip that. We think we can be more managers. We can help them build businesses. We can help them, create strategy around the things that they want to do, right? And we grew up without social media. We didn't even know what social media was, right? I think Facebook was just coming into play when I was headed to college. So, being able to, come up with social media strategies and digital media strategies is a fairly new thing, but it still kind of fits along with, owning your IP, having ownership in the things that you do and having a strategy when it comes to doing that. And early on, we learned that like agents just didn't do that. They didn't focus on that. They didn't have the capacity for that. And it's not a problem, but we saw a void and we worked for years to try to fill that void. And luckily somebody like Travis Kelce trusted us early on to be able to build that out. And now looking at how it is today, we had a 10-year head start on the way the industry is going, in my opinion.
Well, André, I love that analogy of you, in the backseat, looking at, potential Burger King franchise sites. I mean, do you think that experience helped you identify some of these properties that you work with? I'm talking like, Casa Azul, Garage Beer, Accelerator Active Energy. These are new properties. They're not household names, or they are now, but they weren't then. And, take us through, your ability to kind of identify these kind of new properties, these up and coming properties, to affiliate yourselves with them, or rather your clients with them, and take things forward and just absolutely explode.
Yeah, that's another great question. I think the experience with Burger King was like we got to see the things that my mom and dad didn't know. Right. We got to see the things that failed and why they failed. Right. And I think a big part of what we do for our clients is creating a moat around the opportunities. Right. So that's a word that's used in finance. Right. When you put together an investment strategy, you want to look at companies that have a moat around what they're building.
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, man, what a legend. And I have been lucky enough to be able to have the right partners to show me what a moat is, from distribution to understanding a management team and how they want to work and understanding marketing and strategy behind that. Right. And I think that's the kind of approach we take when it comes to things like Accelerator. Right. Accelerator, the moat we saw there was NSF certification. Back when we started investing, energy drinks were not NSF certified. So most athletes, maybe people don't know this, but most athletes weren't able to drink energy drinks because of the ingredients that were in those products, right? And I think Garage Beer is another one, right? It's a light beer. It's in the light beer category, and the light beer category has not been disrupted for years. Everyone's been drinking the same beer all the time, right? And I think the Garage Beer, and it's always, not to name any of the other brands, but it's one of those things where you see the boom of like ready to drink categories of like seltzers and things like that. We took that same approach with the beer. People drink beer every day. People can relate to beer. Also, it's a great story behind Garage Beer. I met, we invested in a company called Hilo Nutrition, and the CEO of that company is now the CEO of Garage Beer. And we had a pretty successful exit in that company early on. And when that company exited, Garage Beer was his next venture. And we've built such a great relationship with him that when it was time for us to get involved, they hit a certain inflection point. That moat that we're talking about was built, and we were able to add, the brand value that the Kelce brothers bring. And they were ready and prepared for that, right? Because a lot of times, I think where we have a lot of success is when we're talking to brands, we are able to sit down with them and talk about a marketing strategy from our client standpoint. So sometimes you turn on the engine before the company's even ready, right? And we're one of those people where we're like, we want to make sure that the company is ready for the amount of attention that they're going to get by aligning their name and their product with somebody like Travis and Jason Kelce. And I think Garage Beer, we hit a perfect inflection point. Then it went viral, and we've been growing a great business ever since, and partnered with Durational Capital earlier this year. And now we're all about growth, moving forward into the future.
Back to the equity over endorsements. It's one thing if an athlete gets an endorsement because he or she knows they're going to get paid for that endorsement. When you go into your own business, yes, I hope and pray that everybody does well, but sometimes people don't. Can you expand more on that?
I think we have done a very good job in creating opportunities for our clients that also we build a moat around the structure, right? So our job is to mitigate risk as much as possible, right? So when we get into an investment opportunity and we choose equity over an endorsement, we have to find ways to incentivize that company to pay our clients, even though they also have equity, if that makes sense. So typically the deals that we negotiate, there is an equity component, but there also is a cash component. And when the company hits certain metrics, that cash is paid to our clients. And in our mind, hopefully that mitigates the dollars that they're investing, right? Or there's a situation where sometimes that, our clients are granted equity on behalf of the things that they're doing for the brand. So, not everything works out perfectly, but also we've been very strategic in investing and partnering with companies that are well established before we insert ourselves, right? I think a lot of the times athletes feel like they need to be the one, right, from the ground up, right? And we're more, let's meet these companies, let's meet these founders, let's meet these CEOs, let's build a relationship with them. And when we find the opportunity to work with them at the right time, let's do that.
Our thanks to 3 Art Sports co-head André Eanes for joining us.
Up next, we stick with the growing world of sports beyond the playing field with super agent Rich Paul. For Damian Sassower, I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
I'm Damian Sassower.
And I'm Vanessa Perdomo.
We'll round out the show today by taking a listen to a special conversation with sports super agent Rich Paul.
The Klutch Sports founder and CEO is branching out into the sports apparel business with Klutch Athletics and has a new partnership with New Balance.
Bloomberg TV anchor Romaine Bostick sat down with Paul for an extended conversation about the sports apparel business, his career, and how all of his various interests all tie back to his love of sports. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
Well, Klutch Athletics, my thought process was really just focus on community, giving that voice back to the consumer. When I was growing up, that's where I learned how to really build my confidence and style and deciding what kind of fit me and the mantra I was trying to build as a young man. And so I found that being fun, going to the store and identifying the brand that I really align with authentically. And so when I looked at the marketplace, I seen a lot of things that was kind of taken kind of out of the realm of the youth and community and the voice of the athlete and the voice of the consumer. And so felt like there was a world where, the next brand for kids to actually believe in could be us. So that's Klutch Athletics.
I'm curious about it, too. We've talked a lot on this show about some of the bigger legacy brands like Nike and Adidas, and the idea that you've had so many upstart brands really make an impact over the last few years, whether it's like Hoka and On in the running space and other sports as well. I saw you hired a long time Nike executive to sort of help run things there. And I am curious as to how sort of a mega brand or a mega industry like Nike translates into a smaller upstart. Are there parallels?
Yeah, a guy like Scott Munson, I think that's who we're referring to coming on. He's been a game changer right away. It's hard to disregard the expertise that he has and the experience that he has. And so we felt that from day one. Look, the apparel business from a sports performance perspective is a very crowded space. It just is. And it's very hard to build a brand. Most companies really start to see a positive impact probably in about year 7. But we have a great partner in New Balance. We have an unbelievable team in terms of our leadership group. And so, just our focus now is just continuing to take baby steps. I think we have the right messaging in the community. I think we have the awareness in the community as well. And so now we have to make the product. And we have to have optionality, which we're focused on. Being in the right retail doors, the doors that tell your story in a very authentic way to your targeted consumer is important. And so these are all things that you have to learn. And so I've had some experience in the space myself, but I've surrounded myself with people that are way more experienced than I am in that space, and they have the expertise and the years of service, and so that's important.
How much does this link back to your own origins? I mean, everyone knows kind of the legendary story, whether it's accurate or not, of you kind of, cornering LeBron when you were selling your throwback jerseys, and that was kind of your bag at the time. Is there a parallel to that?
Yeah, look, I've always been someone as a young kid that I love sports, I love fashion. I was always someone that was really interested in that intersection of culture. And, that thing with LJ was just fate in the airport. Not much of a cornering, I know, but it was more so just like I had on something that he had saw just a few minutes ago, and it really struck his interest, and it just so happened I was in that space. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, everything goes back to sport. And as you see, even when the world stopped, it was sport that kept us going. When you talk about the brands that you named that's doing a really good job, again, their foundation is sport, whether it's running, whether it's training, whether it's basketball, whatever the case may be. And so I've always had a real passion for that. I've had, consistency across all sports in my involvement. I played every sport there was to play. And I was always a kid that really loved the detail and everything. When I bought shoes, when I bought clothes, I really looked at the detail, the messaging that was in it, and things that. And when I identified with brands, a lot of it came from the stories that was told. And if I didn't like the story, I didn't align with it, or if it didn't align with me, I didn't purchase. And so my experience comes from a very authentic place, but we have to go out and do the work. And so it's something that I look forward to every day. And again, it ties back into everything I do. And so when people see me do all these things, I know it's like, how does he have the time? Well, they're all they're intertwined. They're all connected in a lot of ways. They're not all the same company by no stretch of the imagination, but as foundation, it all leads back to sport.
I am curious, do you plan to leverage your existing roster of athlete clients to maybe help with the build out of Klutch?
Klutch Athletics? No, not at all. I think that you when you're a company of our size, which is very small today, you have to be very strategic about how you do things. We're focused on community. We're focused on that kid that is in community, that identifies with us, that can grow with us. And there will be times where we touch the athlete. There will be times where we do activations in community and may align the athlete of whether they're on the Klutch Sports Group roster, or whether if the other competitors can get past the name and really do what's best for their client. It could be another athlete that's on a different representation roster. Klutch Athletics is a standalone company. It's not. There's no one that worked at Klutch Sports Group that worked at Klutch Athletics. The name was just so good, and New Balance thought the name was just really good, and they wanted to keep it as such, and so. We're fine with that, but no, we're really focused on community. Yeah. And going back to that, that time to where representing that little small piece of grass that a kid first played his first game on, or scored his first touchdown on, or that little basketball hoop that was made out of a crate that I used to play on, and you counting down to hitting those game-winning shots, and it's really focusing on that community where we live and play. So. That's been something that we've been focused on. Look, I have this mentality that, and I'm living proof, the best come from anywhere. I'm living proof of that, right? And I'm not calling myself the best. What I'm saying is you don't have to come from certain places to be somebody. And so I want to make sure that, our audience and our consumer understands that. And so I'm really vested in going back into the community and giving kids that inspiration, that motivation, that confidence to be able to persevere through whatever the challenges may be in front of you, whatever the challenges may be within the household, as we know, the world is big in a lot of ways, but it's also so small. And we've all had some consistency in terms of challenges. You know, the size of it could be large or small, but we all have had a sample size of that. Yeah. And so being that brand that pushes, right? What does it mean to actually be Klutch? Mm-hmm. As a teammate, as an opponent, in a competitive perspective, but also just in everyday life, you know, helping your classmate out, being kind to someone, really asking someone, well, how do you feel? You know, like how many people go through the day and ask the person sitting next to them, is everything okay? Right. And so that's who we want to be. Mm-hmm. But we want to lead with that from a sports perspective, but it's for the athlete minded as well, because we're all athletes in our own right. You don't necessarily have to be on the field or on the court to be an athlete. You know, I work with people every day that cover the ground. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm curious about too with your career, Rich. I mean, obviously you made your bread and butter is in athletics, but we've kind of seen athletics morph into just broader entertainment, whether it's, you know, the athletes appearing in TV shows and movies or creating new lines of businesses. I'm curious about your partnership with UTA and the investment that they took in Klutch Sports, the umbrella company back in the day, what that relationship is like now, and whether you have anything sort of in the pipeline that expands on that partnership.
Yeah, it's great. You know, when partnering with UTA, the idea that came from it was to have exactly that, have a partner, have resources that was privy to you that we didn't have at that time, and then ultimately to be able to go out and scale. We've done that. We've scaled the business way out. And, you know, as you know, when you scale a business as fast as we did, you know, there's some hurdles that come with that. And so you try to smooth the pavement out from that perspective. But in addition to that, you know, we are a different company today than we were 5 years ago, really than we were yesterday. And every day we're learning a lot about ourselves, and it's been a great partnership, and we'll continue to expand on that. You know, anytime you have a partner to the magnitude of a UTA, and look, UTA was one of the big three in Hollywood when we got here, and it's been great. Obviously, I'm on the board and a part of the leadership group, even on that side as well. And so it's just great to have that partner that you can get in the car with and ride every day and strategize and come up with new initiatives and new verticals and things like that. And so it's been nothing but support for us from our UTA side, but we're all one. Yeah, it's the way I look at it. And every day, you know, we're integrating and conversating and communicating and trying to do what's best for our clients across the board. And we've seen a lot of cross-marketing. We've seen a lot of cross-integration. We've got guys that come in and utilize every resource that they possibly can. But, you know, there's some guys that just want to play the sport. And so for me, in my thought process, it was just, you know, it's like any little kid, right? You don't necessarily play with every toy in your toy chest, but if you have company, you want to be able to show them that, hey, I have enough toys for all of us to play with. And that's how I look at it, and it's important. And it's been great, man. It really has.
That's Klutch Sports Group founder and CEO Rich Paul speaking with Bloomberg television anchor Romaine Bostick.
Oh, man, that does it for this edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports from my colleagues Damian Sassower and Vanessa Perdomo. I'm Michael Barr.
Tune in again next week for the latest stories moving big money in the world of sports. And don't forget to subscribe to the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms.
You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.